This may be close to a maxed out Golem Necromancer build that can do 68 billion damage a hit, 51 billion damage, again able to do hundreds of millions and billions of damage very easily with the right combinations of skills, gear, and setup. This build can tackle any content in the game and run you those tier 130 plus pits, even kill Uber Duriel and Enduriel essentially in just a couple of shots, doing billions and billions of damage. Now this build was actually sent to me by Bones or Add a Clean Yeti on YouTube. That link is down in the description and in the pinned comment, so go ahead and go subscribe to him. This is essentially the build that he sent me that he wanted to showcase on the channel. And speaking of Diablo 4, it's always good to get up and move around, otherwise you're going to be 90 years old and stiff from farming Duriel all day. So I partnered with YESOUL, who sent me their G1M Plus bike that is the best Peloton alternative out there for a fifth of the price. This bike is super easy to set up and only costs $500, where the traditional Peloton can cost up to $2,500. Whether for you or someone else in the family, this bike is actually really comfortable, and I've been riding it for the past 2 weeks testing it out. The screen is one of the biggest screens out of all the bikes I've ever had, and not only that, it has a volume dial right up front for easy access, and has all the convenient things a Peloton would have to carry all your stuff, hold your water, and adjust every single portion of this bike. Even the tension turns up pretty high to make this bike ride sometimes extremely difficult if you really want the challenge. And I can say the best thing about it is it's so quiet. It's the quietest bike I've ever owned, and it comes with the normal stuff like the foot clamps, as well as an adjustable seat that goes up and can adjust to about every height. Everything plugs right into the back, very simple, and all you have to do is plug in your phone to start streaming, screen mirroring, playing music, whatever you want to do. Again, I like to throw up Netflix or some other streaming app and watch a show while I ride my bike, or you can go through the YESOUL app and do ride challenges or scenic ride tours. We're trying to promote health and wellness here because a lot of us sit here in game all the time. So if you haven't, check out YESOUL's website. Use the link in the description and pinned comment and use code GAMING100 at checkout, and you get $100 off, and you get the best Peloton alternative out there for only $3.99. Let's get back to the video. Also, make sure to check that build link in the description. It has everything from skills to Paragon points to every stat you should have on this build to, again, be hitting those high, almost 100 billion hits. Now we'll go over the skills really quick for you so you understand the full build. We're going to take Unliving Energy for maximum essence increase, and then Hewed Flesh for damage chance when creating corpses. We're also going to come down here and take Blood Mist as an escape ability, so that way we can get out of danger anytime we need and allow us to also leave behind corpses. Then we want to take 3 out of 3 for Spiked Armor, giving us Thorns and extra armor. Skeletal Warrior Mastery, so increase the damage of our Skeletal Warriors. 3 out of 3 for Grim Harvest to consume a corpse and generate essence. And Fueled by Death for extra damage. We also want to come in here and take Death's Embrace for more damage and a little bit more DR. Also Death's Approach for movement speed, and then 3 out of 3 for Skeletal Mage Mastery, again buffing our Skeletal Mages. Then we want Decrepify to be able to curse enemies and slow them. We'll take that into Enhanced Decrepify and then Abhorrent Decrepify, and 3 out of 3 for the passive Amplify damage to increase our damage to cursed enemies. Then we'll take 1 out of 5 for Corpse Tendril, so we can bring enemies in and then also make them vulnerable, all the way to Plagued Corpse Tendrils. And then we'll take 3 out of 3 for Necrotic Carapace, so we gain Fortify, Reaper's Pursuit, and then Gloom, and then finally 3 out of 3 for Terror, so we increase our shadow resistance to enemies who are slowed and chilled. Next, we'll take 3 out of 3 for Golem Mastery with a bunch of additional item contribution points that's going to help scale our overall Golem damage to get us to the billions mark. You're going to want this on your piece of gear, which I'll show you how to max out in the gear section. But again, this is buffing our Golem damage. And then Army of the Dead into Prime Army of the Dead. Other than that, the passive's Inspiring Leader, so you can increase critical strike chance. And then Hellbent Commander, so your minions deal a large amount of increased damage while you're close to them. And then finally Shadow Blight, so that way we deal additional shadow damage, and it helps to scale our build and our damage again into the millions. And I'll go over how all that works in the rotation itself. But again, that's our key to doing big damage, is those primary skills. Now for all of our gear. First off, for the helmet, we're going to take the Blood Getters aspect, so your Skeletal Priests now empower you and increase their effectiveness. And as far as stats go, you want Intelligence, Max Life, and Cooldown Reduction, with Master working on your cooldown reduction, as well as Max Life and Corpse Tendril size to bring in a bunch more enemies. Then for our chest, we want the aspect of Hardened Bones, making it so we and our minions get increased damage reduction. We also want to make sure we have Intelligence and Golem Mastery on this piece. The rest of the skills don't totally matter, but Golem Mastery is a necessary piece to have on this. And then ideally Masterwork this thing and hit it. You can possibly get this up to 6, increasing our damage even further. Then we want to temper Total Armor and Corpse Tendril size again on the chest plate, so we can bring in every enemy on the entire screen and just demolish them all. Next, for our gauntlets, we want the aspect of Reanimation, so your minions gain increased damage while alive. And also we want for our stats to have attack speed as a greater affix if possible, critical strike chance, critical strike damage as well, and then also tempered golems damage and decrepify size to curse the entire screen. Next, for our pants, we want the aphotic aspect. This is going to make so skeletal priests empower your skeletal warriors and deal additional shadow damage. We want intelligence, max life, and armor. Ideally, if you're going for damage, we can stack intelligence as our masterworked item. But again, intelligence and max life here are going to be your bread and butter in terms of masterworking your gear. And then this piece single-handedly should cap out all of the armor we need for our entire build. And then we want crowd control, duration, and max life tempered on our pants as well. Next is our boots. So we want the aspect of Occult Dominion, so you get more skeletal warriors and skeletal mages. And we want intelligence, maximum life, and movement speed. Ideally, movement speed as a greater affix, and ideally movement speed as a masterworked affix. Again, movement speed tempered and decrepify size to give us that max 100% decrepify size across the entire screen. Next, for our two-handed scythe, we want the blighted aspect on our two-handed scythe, so you deal 240% increased damage for 6 seconds after the Shadow Blight key passive damages enemies 10 times, which will be proccing non-stop, again giving us huge damage bumps with this. And then for our stats, we want intelligence, max life, and critical strike damage, as well as minion attack speed tempered and golems damage tempered. This temper is going to be the one that scales our damage the absolute most. And then for our aimlet, we want the unyielding aspect. This makes it so while Army of the Dead is active, your minions gain increased damage and take reduced damage as well. Also for our stats here, we can take intelligence, damage, and the Hellbent Commander passive. This is the primary thing you need on this gear. So it doesn't matter really what the other stats are, you need Hellbent Commander first. And then also we want Golem active cooldown reduction. This is going to help to bring our Golem attack up non-stop, as well as Golem's damage, again here on the necklace. And then for our ring, we want the aspect of Frenzy Dead. This makes it so every time one of your summoning minions damages enemy, they can increase attack speed. And I'll show you here on our Paragon board, our attack speed for our minions also scales our damage through the roof. We also want intelligence, attack speed, and critical strike chance on our ring, with attack speed being your primary target for having a greater affix or being masterworked. And then Golem active cooldown reduction again, as well as Golem damage again. And then finally for our last ring, we want the aspect of Grasping Veins. So you get increased critical strike chance for 6 seconds when you cast Corpse Tendrils, and you deal bonus critical strike damage to enemies affected by it. And again, scales our damage pretty high, and you want intelligence, attack speed, and critical strike chance, as well as Golem active cooldown reduction and Golem's damage once again, all of the exact same stats. Next for our Paragon board, on the first board, we're going to slot the Amplify glyph. This primarily is going to make it so enemies affected by curse skills take 10% increased damage from you and your minions to help us scale our damage pretty early. You also want to make sure you take the resistance to all elements and max life nodes right here, as well as the other max life and damage nodes over here on the right. Then for our second board, we're going to be taking the Hulking Monstrosity board. This makes it so our Golem has increased life and scales our Golem damage. We also want to slot the Dead Razor glyph here, so we get increased Golem damage from the Paragon nodes within that range being bumped by our actual glyph, as well as whenever your minions deal damage to an enemy, that enemy also takes increased damage from you and your minions up to a 15% basically automatic bump. We want to take all of these Golem armor and Golem damage nodes, also give us an extra intelligence bump for all of our skills, and the Bard strength node up here, so that way you get extra damage while Golems are active. And then for our third board, we want to come up here and take Cult Leader. This makes it so your minions deal 30% increased damage for each 20% of attack speed bonus that they have, up to a maximum of 100% attack speed bonus. Now we also want to slot the Exploit glyph, so that way when dealing damage to a vulnerable enemy, it increases your damage up to 10%, as well as stack additional vulnerable damage. You want to make sure you take these nodes for minion attack speed and summon damage, as well as these nodes down here for additional damage reduction and intelligence. Next, we'll come over here to the Bloodbath board. Here we're going to slot the Gravekeeper glyph. Again, the main thing here is your deal 2% increased damage up to 12% for every close corpse. Again, being another big damage scaler for us. We'll also come up and take the Wither board, and here we'll slot in the Corporal glyph. This allowing you and your minions to deal 10% increased physical damage, and you gain 1% movement speed for each active minion, overall helping us run all of the content and again deal more damage. And then we'll take the Scent of Death board. So with at least 2 corpses nearby, you gain 15% damage reduction. With no corpses nearby, you get 15% increased damage. But again, overall helps us for our overall damage reduction. And then we'll slot in the Golem glyph here, so we get a ton of increased Golem damage. And this will be the ideal node to again help us scale the Golem damage into the millions and billions. You also want to make sure you take the rare nodes up here and the rare node down here for damage to injured enemies and some intelligence, as well as additional Golem damage. And then finally, we'll take the Flesh Eater board. The Flesh Eater board makes it so consuming 5 corpses grants 40% increased damage. I'll show you in the rotation section. We're going to be proccing this as a primary thing all of the time, giving us automatic 40% buff to our damage. And then you want to slot in the Essence glyph here to give us additional critical strike damage, with some rare nodes here for damage to elites and also damage to injured enemies and critical strike damage. So we're going to go over our stats really quick just to show you. Our damage with Golem with this build currently is 4,512%. Now obviously that number is going to help us to scale our damage very, very high, so keep that in mind, and you can use it to correspond to your number to see kind of what you're getting. Also, critical strike damage we have at 655%, and then our critical strike chance is at 45%. 45.8%, basically 46, and our minion attack speed at 40 with our attack speed bonus at 60%, meaning we can attack very quickly, scale our damage through the roof with our minions and how fast they attack, basically hitting almost all crits and big crits nonetheless. Obviously have our resistance is fully maxed out, very high overpower damage and all damage, and then 20% cooldown reduction, just helping get a lot of our skills back active. Now I'm going to show you some gameplay at the very end, but I do want to touch on the rotation. And again, that Book of the Dead is also in the comments as well, along with everything else for the build. So ideally the rotation is you want to walk in the room and immediately decrepify all of the enemies. This is going to immediately slow them and give you instant damage reduction. Ideally then you want to use your ult or Army of the Dead whenever it's up to get automatic corpses on the ground essentially, and then use your corpse tendrils obviously on one of those corpses to pull all of the enemies into a tight group. If you don't have your Army of the Dead up, you can use your Golem ability and have him smash one weak enemy to then get a corpse on the ground to pull everything in with corpse tendrils that way. That should make it so every fight in just about 2 seconds you have everyone in a tightly packed group from the entire screen. Then once everything gets all pulled in together, you're going to spam your Golem ability on the stack, allowing you to deal massive amounts of damage with your Golem. Now while doing this and attacking with your Golem, as soon as you start attacking with your Golem, you want to make sure you're spamming your summon skeleton, so that way you're constantly summoning skeletons as quickly as possible. And again, we're doing this because as long as you summon enough consistently, and you're going to also always proc that 40% damage buff from the Flesh Eater node on our Paragon tree, again giving us massive and huge Golem hits. Now another thing you can do is if you don't have a corpse tendril available, you can also use Blood Mist to drop a corpse in the middle of packs, run them over the pack essentially, and then since our Blood Mist drops corpses, we can cast corpse tendrils on that corpse and pull everything in that way. Now that is a little bit riskier, especially in the higher pit levels, but ideally that's the main way to stack and rotate all of this different damage and just smash everything in the game with your Golem. I've included some gameplay of his tier 128 pit run, so feel free to watch that and check the build link again in the description for everything that is the build. That being said, you guys enjoy and go subscribe to his YouTube or check it out below. Thank you guys. Peace.
I'm not ready yet. I need more time. I need more time. I need more time. I'm not ready yet. I need more time. I need more time. I need more time. I'm not ready yet. I need more time. I need more time.